Thanks for clicking on this video and welcome back to Rank the Movies Franchise Month. This is week 5, our final week of Franchise Month. So I've only got one franchise left I want to talk about right now, and that is the Planet of the Apes franchise. I enjoy Planet of the Apes. I really do. I actually had a little problem picking out what franchise I wanted to do last. The Universal Monsters is what kind of started this. Actually, Resident Evil is what started this, but I wasn't going to do that one because I basically covered all my thoughts back in the video game, top 10 video game movies. So Universal Monsters, Friday the 13th is my favorite slasher, so I was going to cover that one. Star Wars, Star Trek, those are classic franchises. So why did I pick Planet of the Apes? I've always liked this series, and honestly, had I been thinking, I might have went with Night of the Living Dead. But I didn't, so maybe that'll be a future video down the line. Maybe I'll do Franchise Month 2, the refranchising, and I'll cover that one then. But right now, I'm talking Planet of the Apes. Now, of course, Planet of the Apes, much like Star Wars and Star Trek, and even Friday the 13th to an extent, can be broken down into phases of what their movies are. You have the original phase, which is Planet of the Apes, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, Escape from the Planet of the Apes, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, and Battle for the Planet of the Apes. I'm going to be saying Planet of the Apes a lot in this video. That's the original series of movies. There's then the Tim Burton remake of Planet of the Apes, which came out in 2000-2001. Then, of course, you have the new trilogy, Rise, Dawn, and War for the Planet of the Apes. So you get these three different kind of areas, and I'm going to talk about them. I'm going to talk about the movies. I'm going to talk about the series. I'm going to do something a little different than I have been doing. So first, I'm going to talk about what's bad. The absolute worst of this series, and that is Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes movie. The series, it's by itself. It did not get sequels because, unfortunately, it isn't good. It took the original movie and tried to redo it, but in a Tim Burton-y way, and it just didn't work. I like Tim Burton as a director. This is just not a good Tim Burton movie. It kind of falls on its face. It's beautiful. I mean, the ape costumes and the sets are gorgeous. It is just such a bad movie. That's the only one I don't own. I did buy it and watch it when I was rewatching all the ape films a while ago, but I didn't keep it. I didn't hang on to this one because, honestly, I hated it so much, and it wasn't and because you can break this one into 3 different series, I kept the series I liked, and I dumped this one because I'm not going to watch it again. It tried to capture what the Charlton Heston movie did, which was, it was the monkeys. It was the idea of being on this planet and then finding out where you actually are, or that your world's been taken over, because this one actually takes place on an alien planet. Because it couldn't do what the Heston one did. So, why they made it, I don't know. When we get to talking about the new trilogy, Rise of the Planet of the Apes did a much better job because it didn't try to do the Heston movie. It just told a story. This one wanted to be like the Heston movie and wanted Mark Wahlberg to be the new Charlton Heston of the series, and it just didn't work. It just didn't work. It's just a bad movie. So now let's talk about the original Ape films. Those 5 original Ape films. I'm going to rank those 5 right now. So, number 5, my least favorite of the original Planet of the Apes movies is Beneath the Planet of the Apes. I'm pretty much in the norm with that this is my least favorite of the Apes movies. It's, as far as what the movies did, it's the least interesting of them all. It's a direct sequel to the Charlton Heston original. They're all sequels to the other ones, but this one literally follows up minutes later. Heston didn't really want to do this movie, so I think he was only on set for about a week. So although he's in the movie, he's only in the first couple of minutes, and he comes back at the end. So there's a completely different main character through the majority of this movie as a second shuttle gets sent to locate Heston and his crew and lands on Earth during the ape rule as well. So it kind of starts off with that same, apes, talking apes, and which you're not interested in because you've already seen it with the first one. You don't want to see that again. You want to move on with the story and learn more. You then find out that there are people living underground, still humans, but they're mutated. They now have telekinesis, among other powers. And the apes and man are finding out about each other. The man already knows about the apes. The apes are finding out about our telekinesis sewer dwellers and are going to move in and destroy them. And the telekinesis sewer dwellers, admittedly, this is my favorite part of the whole gosh dang thing, is that they worship an unexploded nuclear bomb. That's my favorite part of this entire movie. The rest of it is kind of trash. That is great. That is amazing writing. They worship a nuclear bomb. Which is just poetic, because that's probably what caused the end of the world, of the human civilization anyways. Basically, the movie, it has 3 sequels after it, but it definitely did not set up for any sequels. Heston didn't want to do anymore, and so they weren't certain they were going to do more. So the end of the movie is the nuclear bomb detonates. That's what happens. It detonates at the end of the movie. Earth is destroyed. Or at least the ape colony is destroyed, because they're not that far from the explosion. That's how it ends. Also, oddly enough, you get a little bit of time where you have Heston and the new hero working together, and then very shortly after the final battle ensues, the new hero is shot dead, kind of unceremoniously, for the guy we've been following this entire movie, and Heston steps back into the lead role for the last couple of minutes as he confronts Dr. Zaius. Again, it's a weird movie because Heston's just not there for enough of it to do a good narrative, and they had to cover so much ground with what had happened in the first movie to reestablish this new character, to push their narrative through, to get to the ending they want, and then to switch back to Heston. It's weird, and it makes it my least favorite. So my next one on this list is Part 5, Battle for the Planet of the Apes, the final movie of the original series. Now I'll get to Part 3 and how they move forward. I almost have to talk about them now, and just kind of highlight what I like about those movies when I get to them on this list. Basically, some of the apes from the first movie who helped Charlton Heston, they escape using the second ship that was sent. It still worked, it still functioned, or they trudged out Heston's ship. I forget which ship they used, but they used one of the ships, and they kind of slingshot back around, so they end up in Heston's time. She gets pregnant, she gives birth, that baby becomes Caesar, and this is Caesar becoming, the nuclear holocaust has happened, the end of human civilization. It's actually a disease. It's not a nuclear holocaust, it's a disease. Happens, and now ape and man are kind of fighting each other in this one, and Caesar leads the apes, while man is led by some of the remaining characters from the fourth movie, which we'll get to in a second. Basically, this one is just kind of there. A lot of the points in this movie are hit actually in the remakes. In the new trilogy, they hit a lot of the points from this movie. I just think they do them a lot better. But this movie does offer some interesting ideas. Again, connecting back to my favorite part of the last movie, the second movie of the series, is you actually get to see that the humans have the nuclear warhead already. They have it in their possession that they will inevitably start worshipping. And it's actually supposed to be a last resort in case they lose the battle with the apes. They're supposed to use the nuclear warhead, and they decide not to, and they basically start worshipping it. Or start treating it in a manner where it will get worshipped in later generations. So that was a nice add-on. I like that they did that. Overall, it's not a bad movie. It's not great. It's not like, I super remember what happened in this movie. But it's not bad. It's worth checking out. Alright. My number 3, my least favorite, I guess, number whatever, 5, 4, number 3, this is still number 3 on either side, is the fourth movie, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. The Revolt of the Apes, it's pretty, a disease has struck Earth, which has killed most pets, so apes become pets. But because apes are slightly more intelligent than our dogs and our cats, and have opposable thumbs, they kind of become more slaves than pets. Caesar, who is a talking ape, because he's born of the apes of the future, becomes a pet to a circus promoter played by Cesar Romero. Yeah. We talked about him earlier in Star Trek Wrath of Khan. He was in that. He's in this too. Same guy. Uh, which is not Cesar Romero. As I said it, Ricardo Montalban is who I meant to say. Cesar Romero played the Joker in the old Batman 66 series. So, now that I've corrected myself, Ricardo Montalban has him. And obviously he doesn't want him to speak in public because he doesn't want to give away that he is the child of these other apes. And eventually Ricardo Montalban is killed because they suspect he has the talking ape in his possession. And Caesar is kind of treated as a slave, and he revolts against the people who are keeping him in captivity, the people who are holding him down. He rises up the other apes, gathers them together, they revolt. The other apes start to learn how to speak because of being just through Caesar kind of leading them, they gain their voice. And they revolt against the city that they're in, which kind of starts the whole revolt because it's the downfall of that city. And actually some of the characters who don't die in this movie from the human side come up in the next movie as our villains. So it's a nice kind of way. It's a great story. It has a great story. It's nice. It's a nice visual movie. I wouldn't say it's anything more special than that, but it has a great story because it just really does continue that story. So my second favorite Planet of the Apes movie is Escape from the Planet of the Apes. That's the third movie in the series. Basically, we have our three apes who escaped in one of the shuttles. They crash land on Earth. They're fine. This is the very beginning of the movie. They take off their helmets and they see that they're apes and they can talk. They're taken to a zoo to be studied, where one of them is swiftly killed because the actor who was playing that ape did not like the makeup procedures. So instead of keeping him around or recasting him, they just iced that ape because he was basically unnecessary for the vast majority of the story. The remaining two apes, who are husband and wife, are made into celebrities, basically. They get a celebrity status by the press, by the media, because they're talking apes. However, that all kind of changes when it's found out that the female ape is pregnant, and she ends up talking about what the future actually holds for Earth. Therefore, the downfall of humanity, the rise of the apes, everything that would make any American go, no! And you have people who are trying to prevent the future by stopping these talking apes, which anyone will tell you isn't going to prevent the future unless they tell you exactly how the downfall of humanity happened and you prevent that exact moment. Of course, this kind of sets off the chain of events because the downfall of humanity kind of happens because of a disease, and the rise of the apes, which is done because of their child Milo, who is later named Caesar. The apes eventually have to go into hiding because they're going to abort the baby and then sterilize both of them. So there's no chance that they can have other children. They go into hiding. She has the baby, and they end up swapping the baby for a newborn chimp at a circus. Ricardo Montalban is also in this one. He takes possession of baby Milo, now known as Caesar, and they take the non-Taki-Taki baby with them on the lam. They're eventually caught and killed, the parents are, and the baby. That's kind of a really depressing moment of the movie, is when they kill the baby chimp. Regardless if you go, that's not the one you want! Or if it's, that's just an innocent baby! It's just an innocent baby! It's a really depressing moment where they kill the baby. It just really is. But it's such a good story. And it's such a diversion from what the first two movies did, because you were on the Planet of the Apes. And you kept having one, oh, it's a talking human in a world where humans don't talk and apes do. And now you get that inverse, where it's now humans are the intelligent species, and now they run into apes who are also intelligent. It's a really good movie. I've always enjoyed Escape from the Planet of the Apes. And it's definitely one that always piqued my interest to watch the rest of the ape films. And it definitely earned that right. So my favorite of the original movies is of course Planet of the Apes with Charlton Heston. I mean, by far, it is such a great movie. Get your hands off of me, you damn dirty apes. You know, it's just an iconic line. It's an iconic movie. Heston is so good in this movie. Again, I feel like This is one I don't really need to go over the plot of, because basically I've covered it in everything else I've talked about. This is the best Apes movie, and it's the one, if you've seen a Planet of the Apes movie, one of the originals, this is probably the one you've seen. I mean, definitely, if you have the ability to go pick up the Legacy Collection, this is the first 5 movies of the series, so the ones I just went over. Pick it up. It's worth the cash just for the good ones. And again, Beneath and Battle aren't bad ape movies. They're just not great ape movies. So, that's my ranking of the old Planet of the Apes movies. What about the new ones? Well, I honestly think they're all on par with each other. I thought, and I pondered with my thinky brain. But it was hard to say, well, this one's better than this one, and this one's better than this one, because they tell a fluid story. It's a lot like when I was talking about the Star Wars trilogies last week. They tell a very fluid story, and it's hard to say one is better than the other, because it is that fluid story. You start off with the super intelligent baby Caesar, obviously named because of the monkey in the original series. Or the ape, the ape in the original series. You start off with baby Caesar, who grows up domesticated and knowing humans and knowing love from humans. Eventually, he is put into an ape reserve, basically a kennel for apes and other chimpanzees and monkeys, where he ends up using the same thing that made him intelligent to make them more intelligent. They break out and they escape to the woods. Because that's all they want to do. They're not trying to destroy civilization, they're just trying to escape to the woods. But because they were working on a drug, and this drug is what he exposes the apes to, the side effect of this drug is when humans were exposed to it, one human in particular, because you always start with a patient 0, it started a giant plague that wiped out most of humanity, as giant plagues often do in movies. In reality, they're very slow, and you get stuck in your house for weeks. Alright, not saying where I'm filming these. Alright, then you move on down to the Planet of the Apes. The apes are happily living in the woods still. Humanity is starting to try to rebuild after the plague has ravaged society. And now people come in contact with the apes again, and they need their help because they need power. To do that, they need a dam, which is in the apes' woods. The apes try to work with humanity, but obviously some of them don't trust humans because they were mistreated by humans. And so a new war kind of begins between man and ape, led by the ape who wants to kind of destroy everything. Which leads us to War for the Planet of the Apes, which is the apes kind of finally taking over. Humanity kind of gets wiped clean because of their own warring, stupid ways. Also, you find out that the disease that wiped out most of humanity has a side effect in people it didn't wipe out that is starting to turn them mute. Dumb, and it's starting to turn them dumb. I mean, they can't talk, so they're losing their power of speech, kind of setting up where the Heston movie was. Like I said, they're all kind of on par. They all tell a great story. If you're going to sit down to watch one of them, just watch the other 2. It's worth it. It's a good monkey movie marathon. The original 5 are also a good monkey movie marathon. So definitely, check out some monkey movie marathons. They are worth your time. I think if they make another one in this series, it'll be taking place farther in the future where all the apes and other primates are dead and we're a couple of generations later. I don't want them to redo the Heston movie just because, again, why? You're not going to get the same shock value again. It was Earth all along. You can't get away with it again. They did it. It's done. You're not doing it again. Hopefully they try to redo Beneath the Planet of the Apes where you still have some humans living and trying to thrive and survive when somebody from the past shows up. You can still leave that part in, just don't make it all about, apes are talking, it's Earth! Just get rid of that. Just have them be way more accepting of what's going on. Like, maybe they were shot into space right after, the events of Rise. So right before the plague hit, but right after the apes actually got smart and, stormed the, Golden Gate Bridge. Just so they kind of have a context of what's going on. That's what I would like to see. Who knows if they're going to make a 4th one or not. I hope they do. I really like these movies. And I'm not going to do a final ranking system. We know the Tim Burton movie is far and away my least favorite. But again, I can't even rank these 3 movies. So trying to hold them against the original 5, it becomes a hard ranking system. Because there's definitely things some of those movies do better than these movies do, and there's things these movies do better than those movies do. And I'm not even talking about just the way the apes look, because, we're talking about people in costumes back when the original 5 were made versus CG. Yeah, this is going to look better. But that's not the point. It's not about the looks, because, the monkeys in this series, although, yeah, they look kind of weird, they work. They work for what the series is. So I'm not going to do a final ranking of all the Planet of the Apes movies. I just want to talk about them. So that was my franchise month. I hope you enjoyed what you saw. I hope you liked the franchises I talked about. Like I said, maybe in the future I'll do Franchise Month 2, the refranchising, and I'll cover some more franchises. I mean, obviously, I've got Night of the Living Dead and the George Romero zombie films I'd love to cover. There's also other, slasher films. I mentioned Halloween. That would definitely be one I'd consider. Talking about possibly Scream. It's a shorter set, but again, I really like the Scream franchise. There's always the James Bond franchise. That would take a while. And you have other really good franchises. I mean, I'm just looking at my box set shelf right now, and I got Police Academy staring me in the face, though I'd have to rewatch all those movies to properly talk about them. And that seems like a daunting task right now. But anyways, next month, so we're in May. For May, I'm going to talk for at least the first couple of weeks about ranking some directors' movies. Not all of a director's catalog. If I say Steven Spielberg, I'm only going to talk about my favorites of Steven Spielberg's movies. I'm not going to talk about their entire catalog. I was going to do a transition. Originally, I wasn't going to do Apes. I was going to talk about the Kevin Smith View Askewiverse and transition that into directors. Then I decided not to do that because, honestly, if you want to hear my opinions on all those movies, you just got to watch the Top 100 and or the Best of 2019. And basically it covers all of them except Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back and Chasing Amy. And if you want me to cover those, here it is real quick. Chasing Amy is... I've never cared for Chasing Amy. It's not bad. I've just never cared for it. Jay and Silent Bob is pretty good. It's a decent movie. Those would be the far end of that spectrum of the Kevin Smith films. So I've covered him, and I'm not really feeling like talking about his other works. So he won't be part of it. I'll probably do Mel Brooks, Steven Spielberg. I'll have to look up some other directors. Those are the ones that are popping into my head right this second. So yeah, check out directors. Don't forget to subscribe so you can actually see those videos when they come out. If you have any comments, place them in the comments section. Like the video so I know you like what you see. And otherwise, I will see you next week. And have a good week. Later days.